welcome to the Talk Spot. This is Marcus, and I'm joined today by Calvin Parker Jr., who has a very interesting. I'll just let Calvin tell us. So, Calvin, tell us a little bit about yourself and kind of the whole everything that happened with you.
Okay, sure will. Of course, this all happened back in 1973, or that's when it started, October 11th, 1973. And I just recently, not last July, but July of 2018, had written a book and released the book. And that's what brought it all back to the attention now. And I'm just finished another book on the subject, which it was so much information in the second book. I was going to just put an attachment on the first, but it ended up being a 400-page book. But in October of 73, a friend of mine, I had quit the oil field to go to work at a shipyard in Pascagoula because I was working 16 hours a day, 7 days a week, and no time, fixing to get married that following November. So I called a friend of mine up and asked him for a job, and he was actually a ship fitter, a foreman in a shipyard in Pascagoula, Mississippi. So he told me to come on and go to work for him, and I went down. We made an agreement I was going to rent a room from him and go to work for him the next day. And this is October the 10th that I went down. So October the 11th, we got up, went to work, normal day. I did all my paperwork, did my physical, and got signed in, and we worked a day. And he asked me that evening if I'd like to go fishing. And of course, being from the South and raised on the water, I said, yeah. So we left work, got in the car, went home, got some fishing equipment, and went to a place called the Old Grain Elevator on the East Pascagoula River. And tried it there for a few minutes. No fish was biting, so we left there. He said, I know a place just right up the road there, right by 90, and we'll go and try to fish there. Well, it was getting late and I was ready to go home, but we decided to go there anyway. It was the old Shaw Peter shipyard in Pascagoula. So we got there, and the first thing I noticed when we got there was a no trespassing sign up. A lot of debris out on the field. It was an abandoned shipyard, and I said, look like they'd clean this place up because it's just a lot of junk around here, and it's a no trespassing sign. I understand them not wanting you to wade off in there and get hurt. We can't fish here, Charlie, because it's no trespassing. He said, oh, I do it all the time. Let's go and try it. So we waded in through the debris, and we got to the edge of the river and found an old abandoned pier out there that was in pretty bad shape. But we managed to get up on the pier and pulled us up a log and sat down and was fishing. And I was looking across the river at an old Coast Guard ship, or maybe a NOAA ship. It was one or the other. But what I was thinking was, how in the world does steel float? They big these big ships out of steel, and they don't have no trouble at all floating. And this is what was going through my mind when I noticed some blue hazy lights coming from behind me, reflecting out across the water. Now these lights was coming from behind, and they was the same color as the police cars use in Mississippi, and they was reflecting across the water. Well, the first thing I thought of, we trespassing on private property. They down here gonna run us off or lock us up, one. So I stood up and turned around to see what was going on, and about that time that guy that was with me stood up, and the lights just got bright, just like they hit you with a spotlight, all at one time. So it was almost blinding, they were so bright. And we noticed, or I noticed, I don't know what he noticed, never really talked to him about it, but I noticed there was something coming toward us. as we was standing in this light, and it was three bulky looking creatures, kind of built like football players. You couldn't really make them out because the lights were so bright and all, but they came right through this debris and everything, and they was on us before we knew it. So when these creatures got to us, there's two of them got a hold of this friend of mine, Charles Hickson, and one of them got a hold of myself, and I felt an injection going into my arm, and that automatically calmed me down. Now I was kind of worried, getting a little bit worried there to start with, because there wasn't nowhere to run. There was water on the left, water on the right, water in front of us, and you got three something coming toward you. We couldn't quite make them out because our eyes hadn't had time to adjust to the light, and these things just come up and grabbed us. Well, when this one got me, like I say, I felt an injection in my arm, and I'm glad it was, because it was something that kind of calmed me down a little bit. And I noticed after this injection, I couldn't really move nothing. I could roll my head a little bit. I could see out of my eyes, and I could roll my eyes from side to side. And we was going straight in toward this craft. It was carrying us straight to what I call a door. And we got to the doorway, and I was wondering now, where's all these lights coming from? So I just kind of moved my eyes up and around to see if the light fixtures was in there. And the lights seemed to be coming out of the paint instead of or out of the walls instead of a light fixture. And this thing carried us in the door, carried me in the door, and I've lost sight of the guy that was with me, and made a left turn. Then we made an immediate right turn. So when we turned right, this big robotic looking creature, I could kind of see him a little bit now. Not really able to make his face out or anything, but he carried us inside carried me inside this room, and I'm going to call it an examination room. And there was a table. It was actually a beautiful table. You know, you could see through it, and it was made to look like it's kind of favorite crystal or glass. And he laid me on this table at about a 45-degree angle. And then this thing, and I'm calling him the big ugly one now because I got a good look at him. His head just sat on his shoulders, and he moved like a robot. He didn't move like a human did. So he was mechanical, I believe.
Wait, so
And
when you said his head was on his shoulders, you mean like he didn't have a neck at all?
he really didn't have a neck, and he had a grayish looking skin, which I believe that might have been something he was made out of. And I couldn't make out any facial features on him. Now Charlie, the guy that was with me, said he had little antennas all over his head. I don't know about that because I didn't see him. But he backed up into a corner and just sat there. And like I say, he moved mechanically. I mean, he was just mechanical. But while I was laying on this table, I kind of rolled my head to the right because I just sensed something was in there. And a more human looking, and I'm calling this a female creature, came out from a corner over there and was coming toward me. And she looked really normal. I mean, if you'd been in a bar drinking, I wouldn't have been afraid to ask her out or something. That's how normal she looked. She had eyes, ears, nose, hands. The only difference was her hands, her two middle fingers on both her hands was a little bit longer than usual. Well, she came toward me, and she got kind of grabbed me by the skin, the cheek of the face, and felt to my skin. I didn't feel no sensation of any kind. It wasn't warm. It wasn't cold. There was absolutely no sensation where she had pinched me on the cheek there. And then all of a sudden she grabbed me with her left hand and pushed my jaw down and got her two fingers on the right hand and ran that down my throat and tried to come up. There's a little thing that hangs down in back of your throat back there. I don't know what they call it. but it just kind of dangles back there. And she run up behind that and try to come up in my nasal cavity. And I was choking. I couldn't breathe. My nose started bleeding. Well, I was starting to think some pretty bad thoughts of her then. Well, she just pulled her hand out and she communicated in a way, but her mouth never moved. And it sounded like a woman. I mean, just like somebody you was sitting there talking to. And she said, "We're not going to harm you." And I was thinking, I guess the big ugly thing and this pretty decent looking one that had a hold of me. Now, it might not have been a woman. I don't know. But the voice came out like a woman, so they might have been practicing that or something. So when she done that, she backed up, and the big.
Wait, so sorry, real quick. So when you said you were bleeding from your nose, was it a lot of blood, or was it just like a common bloody nose? And did they do anything with the blood that you noticed?
Well, it was a lot of blood running out at the time, and it was getting. I had on a white T-shirt, and it was just soaked in blood. Now I'm
Hmm.
thinking they might have put something in my nose or took something out.
And you
There,
said so. You said this was all her hand. Like, do you feel like at the time when that was happening, that do you think a normal person would have an arm that was long enough to do that?
I don't believe so. I've got in my mind, that of course, back then I didn't know what something from another planet was or UFOs. Never heard of them. This is in the 70s. And I wasn't even for sure that she was a female because I rolled my head over and looked, and you didn't see no breast or anything on her. It was just that she was smaller built than what a male would be, I would think. Um,
Okay.
it's really hard to say.
Hmm.
But you know how a man can sense a woman, and usually a woman can sense a man. And especially, I lived in New Orleans a long time, and you get used to some of the men are dressed a lot are better looking women than what the women are.
Okay.
So,
All right.
you
So
know,
sorry, I didn't mean to distract from the story. So what happened next? So she like so yeah, how so you said that he was over in the corner and you said that they were like basically bleeding profusely, right?
oh yeah. Well,
Okay.
she stopped and kind of backed up a little bit, and she made a little mumbling noise, like an alligator would during spring during their mating calls. I can't make it, but it's just a deep mumbling noise. And this thing just popped up again and moved real mechanical looking and come over where I was and grabbed me back by the left arm again. And I heard a little squirt of air and I felt a little pain in my left arm. And that's when I think they kind of give me the another injection to settle me down. Well, he grabbed me by the arm then after I got settled, and he just kind of glided out the door. He went out to the hallway and made a left, and then right out the front door and took me back to where I was. Set me down on the riverbank about where he picked me up. My arms were stretched out to the river and dropped me off there. Well, I guess he was going back to the craft when I heard that guy that was with me. He said, "Calvin, Calvin, you okay?" And I turned around and looked, and that bright light just disappeared. And this thing just picked up and left and shot straight up in the sky like a streak of lightning. Just that fast.
Okay. And
Well,
so roughly how long do you think that this whole incident occurred over? Like did this feel to you like did it feel like hours and it was only minutes, or did it feel like minutes and it was a whole night? Like how, cuz I've heard that at least just different, instances that I've heard abduction stories, that I've heard that there's a lot of weirdness with time, that certain people feel like it was a minute and they were gone for hours. Did you experience that at all, or did it feel like about as long as you thought it, like you like it
well,
felt to you as long as it actually was?
it felt like real time to me because we actually probably this was around 5:30 and we was at the sheriff department that night at 11:30, and we went straight from there. Made one stop, and they come picked us up and carried us over there.
Mm.
So it was in a matter of 2 or 3 hours. Now, but that was a fast 2 or 3 hours also.
So when it first happened, when you saw the lights, was it totally dark out?
It
Because
was a harvest moon.
okay, because I'm thinking like yeah, 5:30 in October, like that's kind of like that's when the sun is roughly setting, right? Or should be
Yes.
setting. Okay.
Yeah, it's pretty much down. It's getting close to October now. I look out
Yeah.
because I think about that, and I try to look to see about where the sun is and what time it gets dark here and all. Because working in a shipyard, we didn't wear watches because you was beating on with a sledgehammer all day long on that metal.
Mm.
There wasn't no cell phones because average person couldn't afford them. Social media, nobody had computers, so nobody knew what social media was.
Yeah.
The only thing that people had was scanners, and that's because they was nosy and they just wanted to know what was going on. They'd listen to the police department or the fire department or different things.
Mm. So when you were on the ship, like did the ship feel like it was moving while you were on it, or like if you just had to take a guess, where do you think the craft was while you were on it? Like, do you think that it was in the sky but it was cloaked, or do you feel like you left the planet? Like, if you just had to take a guess, where do you feel like the craft was while you were on it?
I didn't have any sensation of feelings when I was there.
Okay.
It's kind of like flying in an airplane. Once you get off the ground and get in the air, if you got the blinds closed, you really can't tell where you are.
Hmm. And when you were on there, like, did you feel like so when you saw like the woman and the robotic like kind of like I guess more like a robot, and then those three entities that you feel like kind of look like football players or linebackers. Like, did you have a feeling of like dread or evil? Did you have a feeling like that, like you were looking at the face of evil, or did you have a feeling more like they were looking at you the way that like a veterinarian looks at a dog? Like how would you describe the kind of feeling that you got from them?
Well, personally, people tried to tell me they wasn't evil, but it's kind of like I explained it. You're sitting in your living room watching TV, somebody kicks a door down, drags you out to a van and throws you in it and examines you and runs a finger down your throat. That's pretty evil to me, and I felt like it was evil. And it was a crime. I'll just be honest, it wasn't treated like one. Uh, but it did get some very serious attention.
Mm.
When we got back out to the pier, I sat down and I talked to the guy that was with me. He said, "Well, we need to call somebody." I said, "Call them about what?" Nothing happened to me. You got to remember, this is the 70s, and they looked down pretty much on anything different in the South in a person's world. Matter of fact, we've had eyewitnesses that actually seen it that's just barely come out now, and they've been real credible. I mean,
Mm.
we've had deathbed testimonies, people calling on their deathbed and want to tell me, yeah, we seen this, we seen it when it happened, we seen the craft and you.
Mm. Well, one thing I want to ask about before we get into the whole kind of like media coverage and other eyewitnesses is, since you're from the South, like, were you like a church going person as a kid or as an adult?
Yes, sir, I was a Christian. I was very church going.
Do you feel
Uh,
like, do you feel like when you saw, did you feel like they reminded you of like demons or something like that? Like, did they feel like, did you kind of get that feeling where you're like, did it feel like something like that, or did it just feel like something that's just really indescribable, you know?
well, I felt they was evil. Now, a lot of people don't feel that way, but again, maybe we was just loud. You know how people used to experiment on dogs and stuff. Maybe they was just there to experiment on us. But in this world, we have different races just right now on this planet, and different religions and different people. Some are really good. Then you got some bad. Then you got some pure bad people. And, I feel like these might fall into the category of curious and bad.
Hmm. Wow. So I mean, so while you were on the craft, so the man you're with, his name was Charles. Is it Hickenhoff?
Hickson.
Hickson, sorry. Um, so when you were there, like, did you feel like he wasn't like he felt like close to you while it was going on, or did you feel totally like isolated and alone?
No, I never seen him on the craft. Now, I know they took him on, but in which direction he might have went, I don't know. I believe we was well, I know we was separated, or I was.
Mm,
The only once I got on the craft, the only one I seen was the old big ugly one and the female looking creature,
okay. So
and
after, oh sorry.
and she wasn't that ugly. Like I say, she was more normal. I've looked at pictures of since I did the book in 2018. I've looked at pictures. I just started getting into all this and looking, and she don't look nothing like what I've seen some pictures of.
Mm.
I've seen pictures of the big gray-looking ones with the big eyes. I've seen evil-looking grasshoppers, or what they called the reptilians, but mine looked just kind of human.
Well, did she have like blonde hair?
You know, that was a question that came up. I was just recently went under regress hypnosis again to see if I could pull any more details out, and I just never could see the hair enough to say if it was blonde or what color it was. And one thing, there was some different lights flashing in there. We were still kind of blinded from the lights.
Okay. So tell us a little bit more. Okay, so that night you go to the police station and you tell them, and then, I mean, I just a little from what I've read of the report so far, it sounded like the officer said that that you guys are very credible, and that he said that I guess he was trying to like, at least what I was reading, they were saying that, or he said that he was trying to like see if he can kind of catch you guys in a contradiction or something like that. And the night of the report, when you guys went in, October 11th, that he's, at least from what I was reading, he said he couldn't find anything. After after that happens, after you leave the police station, like what did you do after that? Like did you just go home, or like what, like how did you feel after
Now,
that?
well, to start with, when we left where this happened, we went to a payphone. Like I say, there was no cell phones or nothing in. And Charlie called Keesler Air Force Base in Biloxi and gonna report this thing. And they said that they didn't take no UFO reports or anything, to call the local sheriff department or local police department. So he called the local sheriff department, and they, of course, they think the worst when you call them. They said, stay in your car, don't leave, we'll be right there. And it didn't take but a few minutes for them to get there. Well, of course, I was driving. They pulled up on my side of the car. They asked to see my driver's license, asked me to step out. So when I stepped out, they gave me a field sobriety test. They said, stand on one leg, bend your head back, close your eyes, jump up and down, count from 100 back down, and touch your nose while you're doing it. I said, heck, man, I can't do that if I'm sober, much less if I've been drinking. They said, well, you need to do this. Then they give me all kind of sobriety tests there. Then they said, well, you seem good enough to drive. You haven't been drinking, I don't believe. Follow us to the sheriff department. Well, they took us to the sheriff department and made me blow up in a balloon and all that. Then they separated us. Well, they put him in one room, put me in another room, and they did, I guess, interrogated us. And they asked me what I seen. Of course, I didn't want this to get out because I didn't want to lose my new job. I was engaged to get married, didn't want them to think I was nuts. And I said, well,
And you were young too, right? When this happened, you were like
18 years old.
Okay. So you're a
I,
young guy.
yes, sir. I said, well, I didn't see nothing. So where they caught us, though, they come in there and they got us both and they put us in a room together. What we didn't know, they had a tape recorder in this room, and that's what they call the secret tape. It really convinced them that we was telling the truth. Of course, me being a little hometown Christian boy, I did the only thing I knew to do. I said a little prayer and all. Then Charlie and I sat there and talked. We didn't know the tape recorder was in there. Well, they came in and got this out and listened to it. And that's when the sheriff came in and he said, "Oh, look, fellas, I know y'all been through a lot. Y'all go home, get you some rest, and I want to see y'all tomorrow." He said, "Now, Sheriff, please don't tell nobody. We don't want this to get out. We'll lose our jobs and all." He said, "I'm not in the business of telling people. I'm just here to enforce the law." So we did. We left and we went home. Well, when we got home, of course, I was bloody from head to toe. And I went into the bathroom and pulled all my clothes off, my shoes off also, put them in a bag because I was afraid of being contaminated with something. And I didn't want nobody else to catch anything that I had. And I got in the bathtub and there was a gallon of bleach in there. And I poured a gallon of bleach just over the top of my head without even rinsing it down and rubbed it in and showered off. Because I remember back then, bleach would kill poison ivy and everything else. And I thought, well, maybe that'll kill if there is anything. Well, we got up the next morning and went on into work. Me and Charlie didn't talk about this. We didn't say much. We got there. But I noticed, now this is my second day at work. My first day was October 11th. This is October the 12th. When we got there, it was more cars around than usual. Well, I didn't have no idea that this was all press and all. Well, we got to our workstations and it just over the loudspeaker, they paged Charlie and me, told us to get to the office right now. So we left and went to the office. And when we got there, the owner of the company walked out. He said, "Look, we can't conduct business. Our phone is ringing off the hooks. We can't get a call in or a call out. We got news media over here. Y'all gonna have to do something to get rid of these people so I can run my business." And I thought, well, how in the world did they find this out? I knew what they was probably talking about. And he said, "I have an attorney. Y'all talk to him and he'd give a press release." So it won't do me no good to talk to him. Nothing happened to me. This is all Charlie's fault. So Charlie did. He got their attorney and he told them what happened. And he turned out a press release. Well, by then, the sheriff had showed up, the big sheriff here in Jackson County. He showed up and said, "Look, I got to thinking about what you said last night, seeing you and all, and I'm concerned about y'all having some kind of bacterial infection because there's no doubt in my mind that something happened to y'all. So I want to take y'all to the hospital and get you checked out." So we got in a patrol car with him, and he pulled out. We went to Jackson County Hospital, Singing River Hospital in Jackson County. They did blood work. They sent a doctor to see us and all that. And he gave us the okay. He said he didn't think we had nothing that was contagious. And then we got back in the car with the sheriff. He said, "Well, Keesler Air Force Base called. They want to check y'all for radiation." I thought, man, this is getting serious now. So we left and went 30 miles over to Keesler Air Force Base in Biloxi. And they had 5 or 6 guys out there, and they checked us for radiation. One of them said all clear, that they want to see y'all in the back. So we walked down a long hall, and when we got back there was probably 10 or 12 government officials in there from the Air Force, and then they had the mayors from the local cities in there, and the police chiefs, and several other people. And they asked what had happened. Well, I was scared not to talk much in, so I just told them I didn't remember much. And Charlie sat there and to the best of his knowledge what happened. And they said, well, y'all can go. So we went out, we got in the car, patrol car, and was going back to the shipyard, and he got a call on his radio. And somebody said that somebody needed to see us back at the shipyard. Now, this is getting on, a little later. And he said, well, who needs to see us there? And they said, Dr. John Allen Hynek. Now, Dr. Hynek was over Project Blue Book. Him and Dr. Harder from the University of California somewhere out there, Berkeley or something. Anyhow, they had flew down on their own money to interview us. And like I say, he had been over Project Blue Book, which they didn't have a Project Blue Book. They had just abandoned it in the 60s, late 60s. Mm. We got there, and Dr. Hynek took us one at a time, while Dr. Harder gave the other one a physical and all. Dr. Hynek come in and talked to us. Now, bottom line, when he left, he said, I don't know what happened to these guys, but something truly dramatic happened. And he pretty much left it at that.
So, did you ever see him again?
Not Dr. Hynek. I talked to him on the phone. He gave me his home phone number. And matter of fact, I was just at a convention in Phoenix, Arizona, UFO Congress, and his son, Paul Hynek, came there. And when Paul was a kid, I had called to talk to Dr. Hynek, and Paul was just a young boy, and he was trying to write all this down on a chalkboard, and I'd have to spell it out to him. And he got the message, and later on his dad called me back. But
well, because how long ago did the doctor pass away? Like, did he pass away in the 90s or something, or?
I'm not just real sure. I think in the late 90s. Yes. Okay.
And so his son is probably what, like in his 50s now or 40s, something like that?
Yeah, matter of fact, Martin Willis did a podcast with me and him both in there. I was just looking at it not long ago online.
Okay.
Paul is a great guy. He's got a good sense of humor. He said this was one of my dad's favorite cases. I remember him talking about it. That whole family is a family of geniuses. And he gives a good lecture. I mean, he's really adds a little humor to it and all. And I enjoyed being around Paul.
So after this happened, I mean, basically there was a lot of like media attention about this, right? And Charlie, I mean, he wrote a book, and didn't he go on the Johnny Carson show? And like there was like when all that was happening, like, did you just want to just get away from it as much as possible, or how did you feel?
Well, when I left the shipyard, I went home. I never told my family what happened. They never asked when I got there. I never told my friends what happened. They never asked, because it was one of them deals that was kind of upsetting to me. I didn't want to talk about it. And they did real good. And the only time I ever really got asked about it was in 2018 when I did the book, and my wife asked me what happened. So, and what even brought the book on, I had no intentions of doing it. One of her neighbors had passed away, and we decided to go to the wake, because that's what neighbors do. And we went to the wake, and while we was at the wake, I've never signed my real name to nothing in public. I accidentally signed a register. Well, living here in Pascagoula, everybody knew the name. They just didn't know me living around, even living in the neighborhood, because I just a recluse. I stayed to myself. And people started asking me questions. Well, before I knew it, there was 6 or 7 people up there wanting to talk. I didn't feel like this was the time to talk. We was up there at this man's, with his family, his wife and his daughter, and they was mourning, and these people wanting to talk about something that happened 45 years ago.
Hmm.
So I told my wife, I said, let's get in the car and go get the attention off of this. So we did. We left coming home, and that's when she asked me, she said, you never talked about it. What happened? I said, well, believe it or not, I'm not going to talk about it now. Uh,
I'm
she
sure that
said,
made her happy.
oh, yeah. She said, why don't you write a book? I said, look, I don't have an education. I can't even spell my own name real good. I don't want to write a book. Then she kept on. She said, well, think about it. I said, I tell you what, just to get her to shut up, I said, if I can find a ghostwriter, I might do it. That was just to get her to shut up. I figured she'd forget it in a day or two. So the next day, we got home, and it was just coincidental. A friend of mine, Martin Willis, that I had talked to, and he knew a little bit about this, had called me and said, look, there's somebody trying to get a hold of you. Said he really need to talk to you bad. He's been trying for years, and I wouldn't give him your contact information. Can I give it to him? So, well, if he's been trying for years, I didn't know what it was all about anyway. And it was Philip Mantell. He's the publisher in the UK that published the book. He called, and he was wanting to talk about Charlie's book, In Contact. And I said, man, I've never read Charlie's book, don't know anything about it. He said, well, tell me about your story. I said, I'm not telling you about my story because, I hadn't talked about this to my family or nobody else. And every time I talked to somebody, the media would change the story. He said, look, why don't you put it in writing? They can't change it. That's your legacy. I said, well, let me think about it. So I, when he hung the phone up, he said, I'll call you back in a week. When he hung the phone up on my caller ID deal, I put no answer and just left it like that. So I didn't have no plans of talking to this guy anymore. So about a week, sure enough, he was good for his word. I was at the boat landing though, taking my boat out of the water. My phone rung, and I just had it laid up on the boat, and I just grabbed it and answered it without looking. Well, it was him, and I thought, oh man, would it be rude if I just hung up on him before I even talked to him? And I said, well, I'll talk to him. He said, well, have you thought about the book? I said, look, Philip, I don't have an education. I don't know anything. I don't know where a period goes or a question mark or an explanation point. I don't know anything about a book. And I don't want nobody to edit through a book that I do if I do a book. He said, well, think about it. You owe it to your family, to the people around you. And I got to thinking then, he is right. If I put it black and white, they can't change it.
Hmm.
I said, I'll make a deal with you. I would do a book, but it's not to be edited. Not a misspelled word, not a period or punctuation mark or question mark put anywhere. It's going to be in my words. And if they can't read good old redneck language, then, they can get them a translator. He said, I agree to that. And I said, now look, we're not going to have a contract. I go by handshakes. I said, I can't shake your hand, but my word's good enough and yours should be because I'm going to see if you edit this book first before we do anything. So I did the book. He said, how, I know it's probably going to take you 3 or 4 years. I said, oh man, you're crazy. I can read a book in a week or two. I ought to be able to write a book. He said, there ain't no way you can write a book that quick. I said, you watch and see. So I come home, I told my wife, I said, look, I agreed to do a book. I said, I'm not telling you what happened. You can buy the book and read it if you want to, but I'm not telling nobody nothing. So I'm going to my bedroom. I'm going to close the door. Once a day, you bring me something to eat in there, something to drink. Don't bring me no phone. Tell me somebody wants to talk to me. Don't let anybody come in that front door and come back to this bedroom because I'm going to be busy. 2 weeks time, I had it all on paper. I sent him the manuscript, and
Mm.
he looked at it. He said, "You sure you don't want me to edit?" I said, "Do not edit that book, or I tear it up. I'll destroy it." And he didn't. There ain't but one word that I seen that he edited, and he must have thought it was a bad mispunctuation on mine. And at the end, I was eating a bologna sandwich, and he changed that from a bologna sandwich to a blondie sandwich.
Mm.
And that was the only word that I seen, and I kind of got tickled about that because in the UK, it's just like speaking in a different language over there. The South down where I'm from, we don't really understand. We have three bunch of different cultures living around. Like Louisiana, you got your Cajun French. Then you up a little north, you got your Yankees, and then they got us rednecks down here. And we all speak the same language, but it's a different language. And the UK is like a different English altogether, also. So, but the book, I guess people were hungry for it. That was the first time in 45 years that I put any information out. And to be honest, I didn't think I'd sell over 10 books and I'd buy them and hand them out to family so I wouldn't have to tell the story 10 different times.
Mm.
But it's been on the bestsellers list for a long time. It'll drop down a little bit, then it go right back up to bestseller.
Wow. Man, that is truly incredible. I mean, was there a time in your life where you wish that did you ever tell yourself like this didn't happen, like, or anything like that? Like, did you try to just, because like you said, you basically went by an alias for a long time. Did you just try to just put this behind you? And did you feel any kind of, it sounds weird to say, but did you feel any kind of like shame or guilt at all about this? Is that kind of a feeling that you had in the past, or?
Well, the period of time I was brought up, I was a Christian boy. I believed in God and God alone. I wanted to be a preacher, and this destroyed everything, or I figured it did, that I thought. Because how many people in the 70s is going to believe somebody that got abducted by a UFO? So that put me in two different classes. It
Mm.
put me as everybody looking at me like a liar if I said anything about it. Uh, me not being able to talk to my family about it. Like I say, you married 45 years and you keep a secret that long and don't talk about it. That's has a tendency to get in your marriage sometime. And it did. It caused a lot of problems at times.
Mm.
And, it's basically my fault. I guess I should have laid it out there and not cared. But since the book come out, I've been doing public speaking and getting out and meet people, and I enjoy it. I really enjoyed talking to people.
Mm.
Now I got plans right now. I'm working on a houseboat in October. If now the deal I got, if when I finish my boat, I'm gonna get on it and I'm going off grid for a while, pretty good while. And I'm
Mm.
pretty much through with my public speaking and flying around the world and stuff because I agreed to do this for a year. Now I did tell the publisher if he needed me, I would come out sometime. I'd call and check on him. But October, I'm pretty well going off grid.
Mm. Well, so like, just roughly, how far away do you live right now from, like, where the incident happened? Like, do you live in the same city or like a nearby city?
I get on my boat and I can be there in 25 minutes, or I can get my car and drive 6 miles to be where this happened. Yes, sir, I live in the same place,
Wow.
and I
And
love it here on the coast.
so do you ever drive by there and, like, if you're ever bored at night, or have you gone back since it happened? Like, since, like, let's say, like, in the last like 40 years, have you gone back at all?
Oh yeah, they have the the city of Pascagoula made arrangements with the state to put a historical plaque up when I did the book, because this book has absolutely put I felt like I owed it to the people on the Mississippi Gulf Coast here to speak to them and get out and meet them and tell them about it because it's been a big interest. October the 11th of last year, I had a book signing, or the city put on like a book signing. It was over 3,000 people showed up at this book signing.
Mm.
Well, during that, they decided to put a historical marker, the only one like it in the state of Mississippi, or anywhere that I know that represents something like that. And they got this marker there, and they put it on the site. So I go down and
Mm.
pretty regular. I was just down there fishing day before yesterday, looking at the site where this was in that historical marker. So everybody knows where it is. I know where it is, and we go back there. And I do things for the city here. And we in the process of doing a screenplay for a movie and all, some documentaries and movies. And the screenwriter was down. We had film crews down, and they all wanted to film it on the site where this happened. So yeah, I go there pretty regular. Have a bunch of news meetings there.
And two, so I mean, did you remain friendly or friends with Charlie over this time too? Like, I mean, I know that he passed away a little while ago, but did you? I mean, like, did you guys ever like meet up and talk about this, or was he kind of more like? Because I know he's a little older than you, so I mean, maybe like I don't know. I mean, did you guys? Would you call yourselves friends or?
No, sir. When this happened, I didn't never want to see Charlie again in my life, and I seen him twice after this happened
Oh,
because I
really?
felt like he was the one that broke the story. And in a way, he was. He should have kept his mouth shut, and everybody went on and lived a normal life. But I think, things like this affect people in a different way. Now, I could have, if the media hadn't called on, I could have got up and gone to work the next day and never thought about it again. But I guess he felt like he needed to get out there. But it's opened a lot of doors. I got to go and I was working in Houma, Louisiana when Jesse Marcel, which was the Air Force officer in Roswell, New Mexico, where that one crashed,
Mm.
that actually took the bodies out of the craft and all. He wanted to see me on his deathbed, and he sent his uh, nurse's aide that was taking care of him to see me. And he swore to me all that was the truth on his deathbed, and I believe it, not a doubt. Betty and Barney Hill, uh, I got to go and spend some time with her. And she says, "Now, why did you believe me without doubting me?" I said, "Well, I tell you why. I just be honest with you because that's the way that I am." Said, in the 60s, a white woman didn't marry a black man. A black man didn't marry a white woman. And if they did, they sure didn't want to bring all this attention on themselves because it would be hell on both of them. And I said, that's why I believed you, because if you was in a mixed marriage like that, you didn't want attention on you. And she said, you're right. I said, that's why I believed you. I said, probably the only reason. And then after talking to her, I really believed her story then. But I spent 3 or 4 days with her after Barney died.
I mean, you raised a really good point. Then I mean, I think some of that like people should consider with like when they hear your story and when they think about you at the time. I mean, yeah, you were 18 years old, like you said, and this was only your first day on the job, so like after obviously you had just worked the first day, and then this happened with Charlie. Like, you know, I could see how something like that would be very traumatic, and you just want to get away from it. You just say, hey, I don't want the media coming to my house, and I don't want people. I don't know how big the city is that you live in. Like, I don't know how many people live there, but if it's a smaller community, like, stuff like that gets around, and you don't want to be looked weird at when you go to the store or when you go to the gas station or something like that. So I could totally understand that. I'm sure there's probably quite a few people that have been in your situation and they never called the cops, never called the sheriff or anything, and they basically just held it, they kept it to themselves and said, we're just not going to talk about this to anybody.
Yeah, you're right about that. And like I say, in the 70s, you didn't want this on you. I I said I got hired, fired, and got a physical all in the same day, and that was pretty much true. All I ever wanted to do in life was get married, buy a house, pay for my house all my life, have children, and have grandchildren, and
Hmm.
raise them, then retire and fish.
Did
So
you accomplish all that?
no, I bought a house, I got married, and had children, but she uh she didn't want no kids, and where I did wanted grandkids. I
Hmm.
said, well, just have them. I'll raise them for you.
Well, at least you got most of what you wanted, at least. So that's
Oh
good.
yeah.
Well, all right, Calvin. Well, definitely, yeah. Thank you so much for coming on. What's the name of your book again, and where can people purchase it and read it and everything?
It's through Amazon.
Okay.
Um, Pascagoula, my story, Calvin Parker, and then the next one coming out, Pascagoula, the story continues, and all of them's through Amazon. This other one will be out probably as we speak. It's probably out for sale, and it's real informative. And what it does, it shows not so much the abduction, but I've been hypnotized 3 times. I took several polygraph tests, voice stress tests, and it gets into the after effect of what's happened. It to me, it's more interesting than the first book
Hmm.
because the book came out in July 2018, and then I just wanted to, just add something to this book to let everybody know, but I didn't think it was fair, so I just put it in a separate book. And the first book's 800 pages. The second one's 400, just on everything that's happened after one.
Oh my gosh, it's 1,200 pages.
Yes, sir. And it's really uh, interesting. This second one is because it covers a lot of different things,
Hmm.
and not so much on abductions, but so much on the people and the eyewitnesses and where they came from. And one interesting thing, when I was hypnotized, I remembered seeing a car going in, and I actually remembered the tag number. It came was able to get it back, and I looked this person up. I got some friends that work for the police and sheriff department, and we found it. And this couple was back there parking when this happened. Well, they eventually got married. Well, he died a few years back. Well, she's in a nursing home, and she verified it. She was a witness, but she didn't want nobody to know. But she's in parts of having Alzheimer's, and her doctor don't want nobody in there aggravating her or talking to her. So,
Hmm.
I just kept that a secret, but that's in there. But we actually have live eyewitnesses with good memories and good credible people that's seen this happen when it did, or seen the craft when it landed. And that's all in the book. The eyewitness testimonies and things. It's just a lot in there, a lot of
Yeah.
information.
Oh, I mean, it truly is. And one thing I want to ask you before you go real quick is that let's say, I don't know, let's say within the next 20 years, um, let's say extraterrestrial beings, they make themselves known to humanity, like clearly known, like, like the talk about them landing, let's say, like on the White House lawn or in, Times Center or Times Square or whatever. Do you, just based on your interactions, do you think that it would be a good thing for humanity, or do you feel like if they came back and made themselves publicly known, that it would be more like a World of Worlds, like they're gonna conquer us? Like if you, I mean, I know that it's speculation, but if you just had to project based on your own interactions, what do you think is more likely to happen?
Well, like I say, is just here on Earth we have different races of people, and some of them's good and some of them's bad. I think it could be a bad thing, but I don't think the Earth's quite ready to share its resources with And I believe if they come, it'll be after our resources. Look at Austin Wells back in the 50s. They had that radio show, and he got on there just and said that we're being invaded, and it turned the world upside down. Just a hoax he was playing on a radio show. So I think it would be really upsetting in a
Mm.
way.
Oh, I think that's a really good point because I mean, I know that that's a debate within the alien community. Is like you said earlier that people are like, well, these things are all good and they're very like malevolent or benevolent. Sorry, and I don't know. I'm a little. If it were to happen, I'd be a little skeptical. I don't know if I would.
Yeah,
I don't know if I embrace them with open arms. I don't know.
well, I don't believe I would. I'd be real reluctant to. Right now, we pretty much top of the food chain, but that could change.
Yeah. All right. Well.
But who knows? They might be good as gold. They might be more help to us than anything. But it's hard to imagine just some of the pictures that I've seen since I've started looking at this. A big grasshopper coming up and eating you or something. I mean, I don't know. But the one that I seen, look pretty normal. They might be here now. They might be living with us and,
Mm.
living among us. So who knows?
All right, well, Calvin, yeah, definitely. Thank you so much for coming on. Thank you for chatting,
But
and
thank you for having me.
yeah, maybe yeah, when you get back onto the grid sometime, let's talk again. We'll talk more about the second book and everything you wrote and everything in that. So definitely, yeah, thank you again so much,
Okay.
and have a good rest of your day.
You too. Thank you.
All
Bye
right,
bye.
take care.
You too.